Youorns. Greetings, fellow Watford fans. Omar here, and it's time for another edition of the YouOrns 10-minute take on Plymouth Argyle 3, Watford 3. Live from New York now, coming to you with this match analysis. Now, Watford, we know that they have had some difficulty with defense this season, and it's really come back in some of these games to haunt them. And this game was one of those games, but overriding my assessment about this particular match between Plymouth and Watford was Watford's character today was strong. I think if you want to really put a spin or a gloss on some of the more disastrous things that happened for Watford, especially at the back, you have to really say that Watford's character today really did come through and rise to the top. Watford took the lead after 11 minutes through Kayembe, a really well-worked goal that scored him score. I think his third or fourth this season for the Hornets. And Watford looked like they were in charge. They had played very confidently the first few minutes. They moved the ball. They had some good direction and good senses of where they wanted the ball to go. They played the ball into the right kinds of spaces, but they really did pay dividends with that in the 11th minute. And then all of a sudden, Watford, who looked like they were going to begin to platform this, did not. In the matter of 16 and a half minutes, they ended up being 2-1 down. Two goals, one of which was a world beater that no one would have stopped. The other goal, a defensive mistake that really cost Watford and should not have been allowed, but it did allow because Watford's defending was slack and they did not get tight enough to the players or the other danger areas of the pitch where they should have been, and they got punished for it. Plymouth were up 2-1 in the blink of an eye. This is a very open game, though, and so you knew that there were more goals to come. And at 2-1 down, Watford did not ever get daunted by what the task was. And so within a few more minutes before the end of the half, Watford scored a second goal to equalize things at 2. A superb goal, world-beating goal by Kone, who made it count really well. Kone has been one of the emerging stars on this team, this Watford side, and he did not disappoint with the spectacular goal he scored to make it 2-2. I think that's his third or fourth of the season, Kone, getting in amongst the goals. And he played well today, as did Kayembe, so it's fitting that both of them got on the score sheet. There would be other Watford players today who really stepped up when it absolutely counted, even though the defending again was shambolic for much of this game. And why do I say that? Because about 4 or 5 minutes after after Kone had scored to equalize at 2, Watford fell behind for a second time. And Plymouth scored a goal that really I think Ben Hamer probably should have done a bit better on if he's being honest with himself. But then again, no defender really closed down the shot maker, and the Plymouth player who blasted the ball right past Ben Hamer at his near post ended up having a free run into the box before he did it. And everyone stood there and watched. It was an appalling show of defending. So I would actually blame this less on Ben Hamer, although he could have got to this, I think, than I do the defense, who absolutely were nowhere to be seen. They were on a milk carton somewhere and missing in action. And that made it Plymouth 3, Watford 2 before the break, literally about 4 minutes before the break. This is a really flustered, or maybe a few minutes before the break, but this is a really frustrating game to watch because although it was an exciting game and it was open, what frustrated you from a Watford perspective was that Watford just could not hold on to leads. Watford just could not hold on to scoring a goal and platforming off of that. And also, Watford just didn't suffer in this game very well. I don't think that they did the most of that. And when you're in a position in a football match, especially away from home, when you've just scored, you need to see out the next 10 minutes of that game and then get back onto the game in level terms or on level footing because you know the home side is going to come back at you again. And Plymouth Argyle did that. And so once Watford got things to 2-2, their task was to get into halftime at 2-2, get into halftime on level terms. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. That third Plymouth goal went in. And Watford were down at halftime by a 3-2 scoreline. But then in the second half, Watford dominated the first 20 minutes of the half. And within the 17th minute of that second half, Ryan Andrews had a nifty pass from Jake Livermore and then a nifty goal from Andrews, chipping the ball over the onrushing, oncoming goalkeeper for Plymouth. And the ball went into the back of the Plymouth net. And there was actually a foul on a Watford player. But of course, Bobby Madley, the referee, the embattled referee, formerly of the Premier League, took gave Watford the advantage, which was correct to do, and Watford scored off of it. It was a great chip, sublime effort by Ryan Andrews, who I thought was excellent today in that back four, despite the fact that defending overall, the team wide was poor. The defense again was poor. You cannot concede goals in this manner, in the way that Watford did, and give away silly free kicks around the D or just outside the 18-yard box as Watford did. You cannot allow for players to just roam into your area and take shots unchallenged, as Watford did. And so those things still need to be cleaned up. It's alarming because these things are happening whether Watford win, lose, or draw, literally. And it happened again today, and Watford drew. Watford do need leadership on the pitch, but they also need to return to the footballing basics. It's something I've talked about often this season. Watford and footballing basics don't often go together, or if they do go together, they're not consistently employed. And I think that Watford need to get into the habit of consistently employing these things. The simplicity of football sometimes is by not trying to do too much in a game. Just do the bread and butter basics to get you through a 10-minute spell. You're going to suffer in these games. Doesn't matter whether you're home or away, but particularly when you're away, you're going to suffer. And you have to learn how to suffer together as a team, how to suffer defensively as a team, how to put that pressure away from you when the battering ram from the other opposing team comes at you. How do you deal with that? How are you playing in the game defensively without the ball when that happens? And that's the kind of thing Watford need to continue to work on. Yes, Watford are in a rebuilding mode in some ways. They certainly are. And yes, Watford have a number of young players. Half the team is under 23. But the fact of the matter is, they will have to perform better than this if they want to get anywhere near playoffs. And, look, today there were some really good moments for Watford players. Ben Hamer was exceptional with the saves he made, several point blank saves, world-class saves from him. Reflex saves, some excellent positioning, one-handed save in the last 10 or 15 minutes of the game that was spectacular. Ben Hamer, superb today at his very, very best. Ben Hamer really is single-handedly responsible for getting Watford this point because the defense didn't have a clue. Up top, they were scoring, but they didn't really make the most of their chances. They could have had at least 4 or 5 more, Watford. But then the other thing is that on the other hand of that, you got to say Ben Hamer really did earn his keep today for Watford with a spectacular display of goalkeeping. And look, Watford, if it had not been for Ben Hamer, could have been down out of this game by half time, maybe by a score of 7-2, as opposed to what it was. So the bottom line is that Ben Hamer has earned your point by himself today. Watford have players, and I did think Ryan Andrews was excellent. I did think that I thought that Kayembe and Kone were excellent for the most part. I also thought again that there was some incredible moments for Watford, and it's incredible how they did not concede thanks to Ben Hamer. I mean, utterly incredible to see how Plymouth did not score in some of these instances. They certainly didn't. And Watford stretched their unbeaten run away from home to 4 games, even though their streak of wins away from home ended after 3 games. At Watford, I think, more than anything else, character. Again, I want to go back to that. Character defined this Watford performance and this Watford point today because they did all those things. They grew in stature, grew in confidence. They could have felt sorry for themselves after being up 1-0 and then down within the space of 17 minutes. But I thought Watford really did show you character in this game because they were resilient. They scored each time that Plymouth scored to take the lead. And on those 2 occasions where that happened at 2-1 and at 3-2, Watford met the task and met the challenge and met the moment. And this is what you need. This builds character. So even though the defending still needs to be sorted out, and it's troubling about that because it's been going on for a long time, this issue. And yes, you could add defensive personnel, but you've got Pollock and Sierralta who aren't playing a whole lot of games. And there's obviously reasons why that is. But I would like to see more of them at least before you are in this January transfer window, which you are. At least see what these lads can do before you might decide to sell Matty Pollock or offload him or whatever you want to do with him or Sierralta. I mean, that's just the way this goes. But the bottom line is I think Watford today learned about character, but they've still got a lot to learn about defending. And once they can get that right, I think that we will see a Watford team that are going to be much more ruthless. If they can cut out a lot of these mistakes, they're not going to go an entire game without making a mistake. But if they can cut out a lot of these repetitive mistakes the naivety around defending, the spacing, and all of the rest of it, and then employ a framework to manage out the 10 minutes after you've just scored. If they can put those things together and do them in a discrete sense, um, and that would be Discrete, not Discreet. If Watford can be discreet and clear about managing the phases of the game and the in the increments of the game, I think they'll be better off. They just need to be much more solid and cohesive defensively as a team. And so once they get that balance right, I think the sky is the limit. But I thought even amidst this rainstormy monsoon type weather at Pride at home park today, I did see some positives from Watford, and I definitely thought that Ben Hamer was the man of the match for a draw. Which if you're ever going to have a man of the match in a draw, this would be the one. Ben Hamer was superb, and I thought that again, Watford played really poorly in defence, but I do think that they looked lively going forward. They looked like they had a sense of purpose about them. Just the end product still let them down a bit. Martins was not on his game today. I didn't think he was very strong in this game. And while some will disagree with me on this, but I do think James Morris had a decent game. Yes, he made mistakes, but I thought James Morris put himself about, was a professional, made some key passes, but he did make some mistakes. I still thought he had a decent game despite that. And also, I think that the key addition of Espria coming in at halftime helped open up the pitch a bit more, helped give some more width, helped give some more pace to Watford. They moved the ball a bit faster, which is something that I've always talked about Watford needing to do more often. And I think there was a more of a high line played by Plymouth. Plymouth, in fact, they invited Watford on at 3-2 up. They felt, well, we're going to dare you to come break us down. And Watford dared and did. And that's what happens. Who dares wins, right? So Watford got the goal. And then Plymouth came out as full hammer and tongs for the last 15 minutes or so. And that was when that was when Ben Hamer earned his keep as a Watford goalkeeper. Sensational scenes at the end with Ben Hamer hugging Watford faithful in the Watford end there at home park. And while some people might say, well, that's just some of Hamer's mates, and maybe they're right about that, maybe they're not. I think that it was a great gesture for Ben Hamer to come into the Watford crowd there and take some hugs and some selfies and some high fives. I think that's terrific stuff from him and a great performance from him as well. Even though we didn't win the game, make sure you don't lose it. New Year's Day then for Watford went pretty well, thank you very much. And their character definitely got built from this game. And the final score again was Plymouth 3, Watford 3. This has been the YouOrns 10-minute take. Happy New Year.